Start today with a little game. And the game is called Good Frog, Bad Frog. Now, there are a few people in here that know this game. I know Ray does. And Ray, you want to stand up? And Nick? Stand. Does anyone else know this game because they've participated in something before? Okay, good. So, it's a very simple game. You need to watch very closely. Use what most of you have come to call sensory acuity. And what the object of the game for you is to figure out, based on what I do, what a good frog is and what a bad frog is. I'm going to be demonstrating certain things, and it's your job to figure out what's a good frog and what's a bad frog. If you think you figured it out, you can either come up and whisper it to me, or you can whisper it to Nick, or you can whisper it to Ray. If you do figure it out and one of us confirms that you've come up with the right answer, then stay quiet about it and allow the others to play the game. If you don't get the answer, just go back, continue to watch, continue to pay attention until you do. And then at some point we'll just stop. Fair enough? Okay, so here's a good frog, okay? Okay? That's a good frog. Here's a bad frog. Okay. Here's a good frog. This is the way it's supposed to go. Here's a good frog. Okay? Now here's a bad frog. You've got to watch very closely. You've got to really pay attention. Okay, here's a good frog. Okay? Here's a bad frog. If you have ideas, even if they're just ideas, you can go see Ray or Nick or me. If you don't, that's fine. I'll show you again. Here's a good frog, okay? Here's a good frog. Okay? Here's a bad frog. Show it for you again. Here's a good frog, okay? Okay? Here's a bad frog. If you have any thoughts at all, don't judge them. Just go talk to somebody. I'll show you again. Here's a good frog, okay? Here's a good frog. Okay? And here's a bad frog. You have to watch very closely to get this game. Show you again, okay? Here's a good frog, okay? Okay, that's a good frog. Bad frog. And notice how you're feeling throughout this game, no matter what's going on, whether you got it, you didn't get it. Notice what's going on in your head and how you're feeling. Yeah, you got to watch really carefully to figure out what this is. I'll show you again. I'll do it by sides here so no one gets confused. This is a good frog, okay? Here's a good frog, okay? Okay? Now here's a bad frog. Here's a good frog, okay? Okay? Here's a bad frog. Watch very carefully. We didn't come here for this. Okay, I'll show you again. Here's a good frog, okay? Okay? Here's a bad frog. Here's a good frog. Okay? Okay? Here's a bad frog. I set you all up to have challenges with this game. Now, what did I tell you when I gave you instructions? What did I tell you to do in terms of watching me? What did I say exactly? Watch very carefully. So what did you do? You watched what I did physically, right? Now, somebody who got it, tell me what the good frog was. What happened? I said okay before I moved and after I moved. And when it was a bad frog, I said nothing. So why are we doing this? Because all of you are here today, besides some of you that are here out of curiosity, because there's something you want in your life. Whether it's more money, or it's a better relationship, or it's more peace of mind, or it's less stress, or whatever it is. And we have been taught since birth, people have said to us, watch closely. And we paid attention to certain things about life that did not help us to get what it is that we want so much. I told you to watch, you watched, and therefore you missed the auditory part. Today, what we're going to be talking about is the part about living life and getting what you want with a fraction of the effort and a lot more fun. I'm going to show you the things that we never paid attention to because someone got us looking somewhere else. And notice how you felt before you got it. Some of you were real curious, and I'm going to figure this thing out. This is going to be good. Somebody said, I got to be the first one who gets it. Someone said, I'm never going to figure this out. I'll just kind of sit here and watch, and I'll never get it. Some of you felt really lousy because you didn't get it, just like a lot of us feel really lousy when we don't get what we want in life. But nobody ever showed us where to look. And not only did they not show us where to look, they told us to look in the wrong place. So today I'm going to share with you the right place to look, at least as I see it, that in my opinion and my experience can help you to get anything you want with a fraction of the effort and a lot more fun. And to give you an idea of what's possible, I want to share with you a little bit of what got me here. And some of you know all of this story, not very many of you. A few of you know little bits and pieces. I'm 37 years old, and when I was 32, I hit an absolute peak of sorts. Because of an incredible stockbroker that made some great investments for me, because of a number of years of very strong six-figure incomes, and some very fortunate other kinds of investments that I made, at 32, I was a millionaire. I had a woman I was in a relationship with that I thought was the woman I was going to marry. I had a wonderful house in Denver, a house in Vail, 2 cars just for me, and the woman had another car. I had every toy you can imagine, from electronics to computers to whatever. I even had it set up in my house where I could just say out loud, TV on, and it would go on. Or I could say volume down, and it would go down. Or I could say, let's watch a movie, and everything would happen on the system, just have a movie start playing. And I thought, it sounds pretty kind of exciting, doesn't it? It wasn't. Because I had all this stuff, and I was miserable. My back ached, my shoulders ached. Even at age 32, my skin still broke out in acne, so I felt ugly and very unappealing all the time. I fluctuated between 10 and 28 pounds overweight, and a whole host of other things. I was scared of people. I didn't trust anybody. I was so shut down that I'll give you an example of an experience I had. I was, a friend of mine from work, her boyfriend moved here from Maine, and she thought that the two of us would like each other. So we went to dinner one night, and we had this 5-hour dinner. And I thought, boy, we had a great time, and I just made a new friend, and this is going to be great. This guy calls me the next morning and says, you really pissed me off last night. And I'm kind of like, what are you talking about? We had this great evening, we bonded and all this stuff, And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, you just would not let me in. He said, you asked me all kinds of questions about me. You were very open, you probed, you were very interested in everything about me, and any time I ever asked you anything about you, you instantly said something very brief and short, turned the subject around, and came right back to me, and you would not let me in. And he said that to me, and I first thought, you're crazy. I talked to you that whole time. And then I started thinking about it. And I thought, he doesn't really have any reason to lie about this. Could I be that off on my perception of myself? So I called my sister. And I said, I just had this experience, and this guy said this to me, and I said, is that true? Do I never talk about myself and never let anybody in? And she said, yeah, that's the way you are. And she said, we would call you on the phone, and we would say, so what's going on? And you would say, well, ask me questions. Because for a long time in my life, if somebody asked me an open-ended question like what's going on, my brain shut off. But if somebody asked me a specific question, I could answer the question. And she said, you didn't even tell us enough about what was going on in your life for us to even know what questions to ask. And I went, how could I have been so off on this? I mean, I did not suspect it at all. I had no idea, but that's how shut down I had become because of a variety of things that happened to me. So I hit this peak. Materially, everything is great in my life. And I noticed there were some of these things when people pointed it out, like this guy. But then, after I hit this peak, everything started to fall apart. And some of you know part of this story. This relationship I was in did not work out. I broke up with the woman. She tried to steal the Vail house from me. She tried to steal one of my cars. She tried to raid a bank account that had about $25,000 in it. I ended up having to sue her. The lawsuit went on for 1.5 years. In the course of the lawsuit, she accused me of physical abuse, emotional abuse. She sued me for divorce, claiming that we were common law married. She accused me publicly of about everything you can accuse a man of in a relationship short of rape, and I'm surprised she didn't do that too. And so that's happening. I finally hit absolute total burnout from living my life like a total maniac for the 32 years, and I was absolutely exhausted and could not take another step. So I took a year off from my job. So I had no income coming in. I had about $10,000 a month in legal fees for this fight with Cindy over the Vail house and the other stuff she was trying to do. I had about $12,000 in fixed overhead in my own life, no income coming in. Then the IRS comes after me for auditing me for 2 years of my tax returns when I didn't do anything wrong and I had all the stuff, but I had to battle them and pay the accountant's fees. I was hemorrhaging money for 3 years. And at the end of that 3 years, most of the $1 million was gone. I didn't know what the hell was happening, that I would draw a woman in an experience like this into my life, that I would hit this peak and then everything would fall apart. And I mean, there were times where, I'd get something in the mail where the IRS was calling me again or something was going on, and it was like, why even bother? I mean, why try? And why are you doing this to me, this real victim thing? And all this stuff came up. And through this whole process, the end of those 3 years, I hit the lowest low I've ever hit in my entire life, and I've hit some pretty low lows. And I got to the point where, and I didn't want to take any of you to that point, and it really wouldn't have because it was a game, but I got to the point where I just got absolutely desperate. And I said, look, whatever I've been doing isn't working. There's something I'm missing here. And I got to find out what it is, because I'm not willing to let this stuff continue anymore. It's just all day, every day I was getting slapped in the face, and I was exhausted, and I just wanted to rest. But I had to figure out why this was happening and figure out what the okays were on either side of the frog so I could start turning this around. And that's when I began. I had always been interested in metaphysics. I'd always been interested in New Age. I'd always done everything psychological. But I still hadn't found the answer. And then it was just curiosity. Now I had to know, because I was in so much pain I couldn't stand it. So I went on this search, and I committed the last amount of money that I had, and I committed all of my energy every day to try to figure these things out, and did everything you can imagine, like I said in the letter. I went to just about every seminar imaginable. I went to psychics, I went to channels, I was hypnotized, I went to numerologists, I went to all kinds of everything, all these different things where you go through all these different processes. And then finally I found the secret ingredients that I'm going to share with you today. And as a result of discovering those, I'm not back to being a millionaire again, but I'm getting very close. So financially everything's fine. I am not a maniac anymore. Most of you know that there's a real gentleness to my life, which has been very important to me, and it's taken me a while to get there. And I'm not totally there, but I'm about 80% there. Relationships in my life are working. All this enormous rage and anger and victimhood and all this stuff that came up and started to spew out when all my buttons got pushed is gone, or at least 90% of it. And my life has changed radically because of the things that I discovered that I'm going to share with you today. But before we started that, I wanted you to have an idea of how I got to where I am. This is not a bunch of intellectual crap that I memorized and that made sense to me. And there are points in my life when that's where I was. I read some book, I listened to some tape, I went to some seminar, and it made sense to me intellectually, and I thought that must be right, but I didn't get it in here. It didn't change my life, and then I would tell other people, but I didn't have any experience from it. What I'm going to share with you today, and you'll see if you ask me questions or in some of the other things, I've got deep, deep experience with this. It is very real to me. And it's been real for everybody that I've shared the little bits and pieces of the model with. Nobody has ever gotten the whole thing that you're going to get today. But even the little bits and pieces are phenomenally powerful just by themselves. So let's start with secret ingredient number 1. Some of you have gotten this from your work with Tony or others. And by the way, just like Breakthrough, I'm going to give you notes that have most of the key concepts today. So my preference, again, and you do whatever works for you, is that you take notes on ahas, you take notes on light bulbs going off, rather than just what I say, but that you take notes on what it makes you think or an insight that you get, versus just parroting what I'm going to say. Secret number 1 is what I call taking the machine apart. And what I mean by that is, all of you, I'm sure, have heard the unconscious mind compared to a computer, compared to a machine. That comparison is absolutely accurate. The unconscious mind is a machine. It's a living machine, but it's a machine. And just like any machine, it functions according to specific guidelines, specific programming, if you will. And some of you got this from Tony, who expresses it better than anyone I've ever seen, but it's not a new concept. The machine functions by asking itself 2 questions all day long. It sits around waiting for you to do something. How many of you in here use computers? How many of you don't use them or you don't like them? If you don't use them or you don't like them, then think about a jukebox. Or you can think about any machine you want, but I would suggest a jukebox. A computer and a jukebox sit around all day long waiting for you to do something. Put in a coin, push a button for a jukebox, move a mouse, hit something on a keyboard, in some cases talk or touch screen, whatever it was. A computer sits there and waits for you to do something. And as soon as you do something, the computer asks itself 2 questions. What does this mean, and what should I do? Jukebox does the same thing. And then based on the experiences or the programming that the machine has, it attempts to answer the questions, and then it does something. In the case of a computer, suppose you're using a word processor, and you highlight a block of text, and you go up and you tell the computer to underline something. The minute you go up with the mouse or the keyboard and you tell the computer you hit these keys, the computer says, what does this mean? And it's, oh, I'm supposed to underline this. And then it goes to a place, and Chris knows about this more than anyone else, where there's a whole series of instructions where the computer is told, when this happens, do this. It goes, reads the instruction, says, okay, I'm supposed to do this, and it underlines it, or whatever it is you're doing. If it's a jukebox, you push A6. The jukebox says, what does this mean, and what should I do? And it goes, oh, I'm supposed to do a record, and B6 is the Beach Boys record. So it goes and grabs the Beach Boys record and plays it. It's all automatic, it's all quick, it's all hardwired or pre-programmed in. With any kind of a machine, it's the same thing if it's a microwave or a piece of stereo equipment or your car when you turn on the ignition. All machines function by asking themselves those 2 questions. What does this mean, and what should I do? And then they scan a series of instructions somewhere, trying to figure out how to answer the questions and decide what to do. That's what allows a machine to work, and that's what drives our lives all day long, every day. Somebody says something to you, something happens, you hear a noise, whatever it is, your unconscious mind says, what does this mean, and what should I do? And attempts to answer the questions. So whatever is happening in your life right now in terms of how you're communicating with yourself, again, a lot of you have learned this with Tony's work, is the result of those questions. Something happens in your life, and a result of your past experiences, you decide that that means something you should be depressed about, or you should be angry about, or you should be happy about, or you should be confused about. But it's all mechanical. We don't feel like it is, but the whole process is mechanical. Something happens, the questions get asked, the instructions that are in our unconscious mind get scanned, an answer comes out, and boom, we do something, or we feel something, or we experience something. So the first part, the first secret, is to understand that you are not a machine, but the unconscious mind that's driving your daily experience is a machine. And it's all very mechanical, and you've all gotten a glimpse in doing some of the work that you've done in how you can change what the machine does. But it's real important you understand it's a machine. Just like a microwave, just like a jukebox, just like a computer. And all day long it's on autopilot, lightning fast, asking and answering these questions and determining what's going to happen with you as a result. Now that's step one. Unconscious mind is a machine. Secret ingredient number two. Now when I first discovered this, it was considered pretty strange in a lot of circles. Now it is being proved by scientists all over the world. Whether it's physicists or it's quantum mechanics people, all kinds of scientists in all other fields are starting to document this, and that is, on an unconscious level, all living things are connected through what I call a gigantic communications network. Now, I'll give you an example of this, and I tell you the example I'm going to tell you, I hate the example. I hate what these scientists did. And the reason I'm telling you is because it's a very dramatic example of the power of what I just said. They did an experiment many years ago where they took a mother rabbit and they submerged her in a submarine off the coast of Japan. And they took one of her babies, put it in a laboratory in California, and they wired this mother rabbit up to all these gizmos so they could measure her physiology. And this is the part I hate. They then killed the rabbit, the baby rabbit in California, and at a prearranged time. And at the exact moment they killed the baby rabbit, the mother in a submarine off the coast of Japan went crazy. She knew. You've all had experiences like this. I had an experience when I was 16. I was in a pretty bad car accident at 3:05 a.m. in the morning, and right at that moment my mother, bolt upright in bed, wide awake, knew something had happened to me. It's happened to all of you. You might have called it a psychic experience, you might have just called it woo-woo, you might have called it whatever you called it, but this has happened to us, where you've had documentation. You just knew somebody was going to say something before they said it. You knew something was going to happen to you before it happened. It's because of this fact that we're linked unconsciously together, all living things, but particularly humans. It's at the unconscious level, it's behind the scenes, but we are all linked together. And then I will share a metaphor with you. And by the way, I'm going to be sharing a lot of metaphors with you today. I believe that the metaphors are absolutely accurate. And I will tell you, even if they're not completely accurate, they work. And I'll tell you something. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today that you might call deep issues. What's our purpose? What's the purpose of life on earth? Why are we here? All these things. You want to know the truth? We're never going to know the answers to those questions for sure. We're never going to know. It can make the most logical sense to you. You can feel right on that it's true. You could have been conditioned as a kid in some religious training that it was true, and the truth is we're never going to know. It's not part of the game, which we'll get into later. So to me, it does not matter whether it makes intellectual sense. It doesn't matter if you like the idea. It doesn't matter if it violates something that you were taught. The only thing that matters in my reality is whether it works. Does it help you get what it is that you really want? So I'm going to share these metaphors with you. I believe they're accurate. But even if they're not, or even if they're not completely accurate, they work. And so what I ask you to do is to take a look at it, listen today with an open mind, pay attention, because I'm going to build layer upon layer upon layer until all of a sudden this whole vision is going to explode. And what I want you to do, even if some of the stuff I say, and it may not to you, but even if it seems weird, or even if it seems strange, or even if it seems bizarre, or even if it just fascinates the hell out of you, listen with an open mind and understand that my measurement is the only thing that matters is if it works. And what I will tell you is it works. And so much of what we use in our life doesn't. So the first metaphor, and again, a lot of you have heard about this, is that we're all connected on an unconscious level through this gigantic unconscious communications network. And metaphorically, all day long, we are sending classified ads into this network, asking for what we really want in our lives, offering to give what it is that we want to give. And all day long, these ads flash back and forth. People respond to them. Unconsciously, agreements are made, negotiations are conducted, agreements are made, and then something happens up here that we call our daily life. In my opinion, it is all generated by the unconscious flow of these metaphorical classified ads. So let me ask you a question. If you were going to run an ad, a real classified ad in a newspaper, what would you do? What would be the first thing you'd do? You tell me. Yeah, there's something you want to buy, or there's something you want to sell, or there's something you want to do. So you write an ad. Now, do you want that ad to be real clear? Because if it isn't, what's going to happen? It's going to be fuzzy. You're not going to get what you want. So you do your best to write a real clear ad. You take it to the newspaper, you send it to them, whatever you do, they print it, then what happens? People call. And you talk about it. You know, they may ask you questions, and I know it's not what I want. Or they may say, okay, how much? And you tell them a price, and they say, that's too much. And then you negotiate back and forth. You don't reach an agreement. You go your separate ways. Eventually, if you got a good product to sell or a good idea, or whatever it is your ad's about, you're running it for a job to hire somebody, eventually you end up getting what you want, typically. That, to me, is the same exact process of what's going on in our lives every single day. Consciously, or in some other ways we're going to talk about later, we decide there's something we want, or there's something we're willing to give. An ad gets written, it gets sent into the network. People respond, there are negotiations, there are discussions, agreements are made, and then something starts to happen in our daily life. This is happening with computers, by the way. How many of you ever heard of something called the Internet on computers? It's this gigantic communications network that supposedly connects 35 million people on the planet together. I know a woman who is a professor. She teaches people at the Colorado College of Mines. And she and her husband were going to take a vacation. I don't remember where, in South Carolina or somewhere. And they wanted to go fishing. So they put a message out on the internet saying, my husband and I are going, we want to go on this fishing trip. Please let us know places to stay, places to rent a boat, and where the best fishing is. She got 157 responses from people that happened to live there, telling her best places to fish, best places to do this, best places to do that. In fact, one person even said, hey, my husband and I are going to be gone. You can come stay at our house. You can come use our boat for free, and the lake that's right behind our house is one of the best places to fish. And as our lives move forward, our lives are going to be more like that. So it's even starting to happen in the physical world, which to me is the engine that generates all of our daily lives, this back and forth flow of classified ads. So everything that is in your life right now, whether it's good or it's bad or it's pleasurable or it's painful or it's confusing or whatever it is for you, everything that is in your life right now is there because of an ad that you placed or because of an ad that you responded to. Now, I know it's not always fun, but to me, that's the reality. And we'll get more into this as we move in through the day. Now, to me, there is a part of the unconscious mind that, for lack of a better term, I call the assistant. And that assistant's whole job in life is to manage this communication flow. And it listens to everything you say to yourself. It monitors everything you think, everything you feel. It scans the programming that you got growing up. And as a result, it takes everything that you say literally, with a couple modifications I'll explain later, creates an ad, sends it into the network, deals with the responses, scans everybody else's ads, taking what you said or you thought or you felt literally, and attempts to get it for you. It doesn't judge. It doesn't say, well, Kevin, I don't know if you really meant that, so I don't know if I'm going to run the ad. And if you run an ad, one of the classic stories, and some of you have heard me tell this, I did a private session with a woman, and what she really wanted most in her life right then was to go to China and teach Chinese kids English and the whole entrepreneurial spirit of America as China comes more and more into the world. So she said, but you know, I don't speak Chinese. She said, but I can go to this school and I can get fluent, and it would cost $5,000, and I don't have $5,000, but I could borrow it. But then I think, well, God, what if I borrow it and I get fluent in Chinese and I get all the way over there and nobody wants to learn from me? Or I can't find a decent place to live, or I can't find any friends, and I'm halfway across the world in debt, frustrated, and none of this is happening. She goes, oh, God, I don't know if I even want this. So I said to her, I talked to her about this metaphor, and I said to her, what do you think your ad says? And she stopped for a moment, and she said, well, it probably says, wanted, help to get to China to live my dream, need $5,000, but oh shit, what if this or this or this or this or this or this or this? I don't even know if I want this. And I said to her, if that was a real ad, who would answer it? They don't even know what you want. And they don't know if you want $5,000. They don't know if you want help getting a place to live. They don't know if you want help finding friends. They don't know if you want help with students. You can't answer the ad. It's not asking for anything. And she thought about that, and she realized that's probably why she wasn't going to China. Because, see, the thing is, I know it doesn't look like it, but on the surface, but unconsciously, everybody on the planet, we'll get more into why later, wants to help everybody else get what they want. Now, all those people that that lady communicated with on the internet may not have been just sitting there every day hoping somebody would call them to ask for fishing advice. But the minute they got a request, boom, they responded. They could have said, who cares if these people have a good vacation? But everybody wants to help everybody else, and people will help you if your ads are clear and if it's part of your game, which we'll talk about later. The challenge with so many of us is, for one reason or another, our ads either aren't clear, like this lady's one. This lady's ad was not clear, so nobody could really answer it. It's like if you ran an ad to sell a computer, and you said, for sale, Macintosh 2FX with 8 mega memory, 250 megabyte hard drive, and by the way, I'm really not sure if I want to sell this because I really think I may need it to write my book in 3 months. And if I sold it, I probably would piss the money away anyway, and then I would need a computer and I wouldn't have it. People would stop reading long before they ever got to your phone number. And that's what happens with so many of us. Because we think, well, I'm just thinking this stuff, or I'm just having these feelings, or this old childhood crap is just coming up. But this assistant is listening 24 hours a day. It's taking everything literally. It's sending it into the network. And everybody who reads your ads is taking everything literally. Nobody reads the ad of this woman who wants to go to China and says, oh, well, I think what she really means is she wants help with the $5,000, so I'll help her with the $5,000. They just blow the ad off. The other example that happens so many times with us is we know what we want, the ad is clear on the unconscious level, and then at the end there's a PS. And the PS, which is taken literally, sabotages the whole thing. Now, I had in a situation with this, which again to me is one of the classic examples. I was doing a session with someone who said, I just can't seem to draw the kind of person I want into my life for a relationship. And I know what I want. In fact, I've written like 10 pages about what I want this person to be like and what I want to be like in the relationship and what I want us to be like. And I keep drawing in these wackos, which I have had a lot of experience with up until a few years ago. And so I said, okay, so you wrote 10 pages on this. And I said, can you get back to the space you were in when you wrote those 10 pages? Can you get back there? I mean, see what you were seeing, hear what you're hearing, feel what you're feeling. You're totally back there. The person said yes. I said, okay, now, and their eyes were closed. And I said, now, while you're doing all this writing, is there anything else going on in the space? Are you saying anything to yourself? Are you feeling anything? Is anything else going on? Now, by the way, this particular example happened to be easy. Sometimes it's not that easy to find out what the PSs are. And this person paused for a minute, and then they opened their eyes and they started to cry. And they said, you know what it is? And I said, no. And they said, I get done doing all this writing, and then I say to myself, somebody with all that wouldn't want me. Guess what just went into the ad, and guess what happens? All the people that might have been reading that ad saying, yeah, I match that, I match that, I match that. Oh, well, if you wanted this, you wouldn't want me anyway, so they don't answer the ad. But what kind of a person would answer an ad like that? I'm not being judgmental here, but I mean, that's what happens. The people that would respond to an ad like that are somebody that wants somebody for whatever reason that's got some pain, that's got some challenges. And it draws in a different kind of a response. Had another example with a guy. He came to me, he's been in the same job for 12 years, and he hates it. Didn't always hate it, but he hates it now. And he wants to quit. And so I said, all right, so have you done any thinking, and this is something we're going to talk about later. I don't care what it looks like. Have you done any thinking about what you want the elements of your new job to be like? Do you want it to be inside or outside with a lot of people by yourself, flexible hours 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, weekends, whatever? How much money do you want to make? He said, look, I just want to survive. I just want to know my bills are paid. And I said, well, so what does that mean? He said, well, that means $2,000 a month. And I said, guess what your ad's saying? Wanted. Job that pays $2,000 a month. And he's sitting here figuring out, well, should I be a fireman? Or should I go into insurance? Or should I do this? Or should I do that? And he's saying, I want $2,000 a month. So nobody that has a job that offers $5,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 is going to answer his ad, because he's saying, I want a job that pays $2,000. And when his assistant is scanning all the other ads that are out there, he's going to totally ignore all the 5, 10, 20, 50, whatever it is, $1,000 a year jobs, because he's asking for $2,000. Sometimes our ads are really clear, they're really specific, but isn't what we really want. That guy didn't really want $2,000 a month. What he really wanted was that minimum or more. But what he was asking for was $2,000. And what started to come into his life was what I would call limited opportunities, because that's what he was asking for. So whatever is in your life right now is there because your assistant listened to something that you said or you thought or you felt or you experienced, or another element we'll talk about later, and ran an ad. Somebody responded, you got exactly what you wanted, what you asked for. Or somebody else ran an ad and you responded, and you made an agreement. You negotiated, you made an agreement, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. And boom, something happened up here in your daily life. I don't mean to put her on the spot, but Cecily here found her way to our breakthrough seminar on Saturday. She didn't get a letter from us, but she's part of an organization that somebody got the letter and told somebody who told somebody who told somebody, and it finally got to her secondhand. And she didn't even really know what it was about, and she probably wasn't even going to go, but she was driving in the area on Saturday and decided, oh, well, there's that seminar today. I'm going to go to that. She got there at 10, the seminar started at 9, the hotel told her the wrong time, and she found her way here as a result of a series of quote-unquote coincidences like that. I would suggest that's not what happened. I would suggest there's something that she wanted, an unconscious ad went out, and the person who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody ended up feeding her some information, which ended up getting her having that feeling Saturday at about 9 or whenever it was that I ought to come to this place, which led her to here where I think she's going to get something that she really wants. That's the way life works. And you've all seen that. You've all had experiences where you were at what you would call on a roll. You're always in the right place at the right time. Things were just moving, almost magically. This is the mechanism that's generating it. The unconscious communication, the ads going back and forth, your assistant listening, managing, dealing with the communications flow, taking everything literally, and based on certain guidelines, running ads, dealing with the responses, and scanning everyone else's ads. And that's what's generating everything that you call your daily experience. Everything. Except for one factor that modifies all of this, which we will talk about in a little bit. So, at this point, what I would like to do is, if there are any questions on this or anything we've talked about, I will be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we're going to take a 10-minute break before we continue. Anybody have any comments or questions? Susie? Say it again so we can get it on there. And we can see if you remembered your question.
Okay. In my experience, it seems to me that frequently the assistant or the subconscious, whatever you like to call it, responds more instantly to those PSs, to those little asides, than it does to what's in the conscious, what you think you want.
Right.
What you're telling yourself verbally and you say, I want this, and you see that you're getting something else. So my curiosity is, why does the assistant respond so instantly to those yes buts?
I will give you a partial answer now, and I will give you a detailed answer in a session later today. The partial answer is because the system is set up to take everything literally. And if you have all this conscious stuff, and then there's a PS that undercuts all of it, the bottom line message of the ad is taken, just like you would do in real life. If somebody, for example, and I know this isn't realistic, but if somebody was running an ad to sell their own home, and you were reading this ad, and it was like you were reading, yeah, I love this, it's just what I want, and they're describing all these things, and then it says at the bottom, by the way, we're only going to sell this house if my husband gets a job and we get transferred, and we're probably not going to know about that for 8 months. And it undercuts it. And it doesn't matter what was before it. The bottom line message ends up being what the bottom line message is, and that's how somebody responds. And the system, and we'll get more into why later, but the system is set up to take everything literally. Your assistant takes everything literally. The people that read your ads take everything literally, and everything is judged by that. And the additional answer to that we'll get to this afternoon, or maybe before lunch, because we're moving pretty quickly here. So partial answer, but I promise you you'll be satisfied with a full answer before the day is over. Anyone else? Henry.
Are you going to give us any assistance in figuring out what we have written in our ads if we don't have any idea?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, thanks.
I'll probably let you do that as well, but I'm definitely going to let everyone else. Anyone else? Kelly. Wait for the mic if you would. I think you are, yeah.
In your experience, Bob, do you think that there are also malicious people working on the system who are intentionally trying to goof other people up?
No.
Never happens.
We'll talk about that in detail this afternoon. In my opinion, that never happens. It may look like that. It may feel like that. I certainly felt like that when all this stuff was happening to me. But in my opinion, and we'll get into the details of why and how, everything that happens in your life is choice. It's mutual agreement by all parties involved for mutual benefit, even if it doesn't look that way at the moment. But we'll get into this a lot more. But no, I don't think there are. It looks like that sometimes, even if you're talking about something like the internet, like a computer network. There are people that do all kinds of things, and if you're into computers, you've heard about viruses and all kinds of other things. But I don't believe there's anything malicious. I believe everyone is trying to help everyone else. Everything that you draw into your life is choice with purpose and mutual benefit for everybody involved. And we'll get more into that later.
Bob, is there a way to get that assistant to stop you when you're putting something negative in the ad and make you aware of it so you can go back and stop and redo the ad at that point?
Yes and no. Theoretically, it's possible, and if it's part of your game, and we will talk about what that means later, yes, you could create that. Typically, in my experience, the purpose of the game is to throw something out and see what comes back, and based on what comes back, deal with it, rather than having a mechanism that stops the flow in the first place. But as you'll see as we get into this, everybody's different and there are no rules, and that very well may be something you'd want to create for yourself, and then you can do that, or at least try and see what happens. My experience is most of the things are designed to let things flow openly and see what happens and then make decisions. And we'll get a lot more into that a little bit later.